The Smiths' Morrissey. The book is as controversial as you'd expect, not least because it's printed as a Penguin classic, an honour normally reserved for the likes of the Keats, Yeats and Wildes Morrissey sang about. He didn't send out review copies in advance, but already reviewers are glowing. The only book signing, though, was rather annoyingly in Gothenburg. Here's our culture and digital editor, Paul Mason.
There's no fan quite like a Morrissey fan. And they were queuing today in Gothenburg, Sweden, the only place the great Mona of Manchester is doing a signing. No interviews, of course. The autobiography, titled Autobiography, was launched as far away as possible from the British music press. But fans came from all over.
Yeah, it's crazy, but this thing's we do for Morrissey.
He's my god.
But the legendary scenes in the book have changed. The club in Covent Garden, where the Smiths first played, is now an Apple store. The Grave Morris pub in East London, now a Paddy Power. The gritty streets where he filmed this, less gritty. The Leaning Post is still here, but the world that made Morrissey so miserable has changed. So why has this 457-page poem of self-pity become an instant classic? Well, in the first place, it's good. Even from page one, it's clear the lad from Davyhulme can write. My childhood is streets upon streets, upon streets, upon streets. Streets to define you and streets to confine you. We live in forgotten Victorian knife-plunging Manchester, where everything lies wherever it was left over 100 years ago. The more you ignore me, the closer I get. The book is full of revelations. Morrissey had his first serious relationship at 35 with a man when he was singing this. He was grilled by Special Branch after saying bad things about Margaret Thatcher, and he can get quite annoyed about little things. I vomit, he writes, profusely when I discover that the album has been pressed in Japan with Sandy Shaw's version of Hand in Glove included. I am so disgusted by this that I beg people to kill me.
The Morrissey variation on the classic neurotic boy outsider posture was to mix it in with the passive-aggressive intellectual, the man who was smarter than anybody else but preferred to ostentatiously hang out in a corner waiting for people to notice.
Morrissey is famous for being gobby on the monarchy.
You know, you're from England. Did you enjoy the Queen's Jubilee? It was such a lovely celebration.
A celebration of what?
60 years of majesty.
Yeah, but 60 years of dictatorship.
And there's more in the book like that. But what's the attraction to the Spotify generation of a 54-year-old virtual recluse?
I got his name signed on my wrist, and I'm going to get it tattooed today. So it's going to be there forever. And it just means a lot to me. He's very special.
Morrissey became a kind of human montage of all the tragic icons that obsessed us in the 1970s, from James Dean to Elsie Tanner. We wanted men to look good but be emotional, and he was. We wanted rock stars to throw gladioli from the stage. Actually, we didn't want that, but he did it anyway. And he's had an argument with his publisher, Penguin, but with sales brisk, heaven knows, they're not miserable now.
Well, joining me now is the writer and broadcaster Amy Lame, a die-hard Morrissey fan, and the author and journalist Tim Lott. Now, I should declare my interest. I'm a huge Morrissey fan. John has been obsessing about the first paragraph of this book all day, which goes on for 4 pages, and he's going to try and read it.
Here goes. My childhood is streets upon streets upon streets.
We got that. So, Amy, how much have you read?
Well, I was at my local bookshop at 10 a.m. this morning, just as it opened, to make sure I got the book.
I see. I downloaded it. It was much quicker, much more convenient.
And I've just been dipping in and out all day. I've been working today, so dipping in and out.
But you see, Tim, a lot of people, and I think you yourself included, are still furious about the fact that it's a Penguin classic.
Yeah, I had my nose put out of joint by it. I mean, this is my book, a real Penguin modern
Not
classic.
a Penguin classic, I see.
It's a Penguin classic, yes, a Penguin modern classic.
It's a modern classic, yeah, a mere modern classic, yes.
Yeah, which puts it on the same list as Lolita, Animal Farm, Clockwork Orange, In Cold Blood, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and Morris's
Congratulations.
new book.
Yes.
And Morris's new book.
Yeah.
And you can see that's quite a canon. It took me 10 years of publication to be in print to get this. It was one of the proudest days of my life. I felt so pleased and delighted that all the work I put into it over the years, and, you know, sweated blood to write it in the first place.
And you feel it's all been devalued now?
I don't think it's all been
It was all
devalued.
worthless,
But
yeah.
it wasn't all worthless.
No.
But I do feel it's cheapened something that I worked very hard and to achieve.
Well,
I mean, Morrissey himself was complaining in his humble way about appearing on the same stage as somebody who's producing a version of his song that he didn't like, and he was outraged by that. There's an echo of that, I suppose, in this book coming out.
But the thing
he hasn't. I mean, it's like me winning the Mercury Prize for playing the.
But the thing you're going to have to admit sooner or later, if you read it, is that it's actually very good.
Yeah, and also the other thing, I think you're being a bit sanctimonious, to be honest. I mean, he's been writing for over 30 years. You know, it may not be these.
30 years.
Yeah, but that's writing.
No, oh right, yeah. So like Kajagoogoo, that kind of thing. I mean, you know, it's
you're not comparing the Smiths to Kajagoogoo.
I don't think you compare songwriting.
I mean, really.
So I won't do it.
You cannot compare songwriting or indeed
but
poetry.
He's a writer. He's a writer.
Well, he's a musician and he's a singer. And I think to put something like this out, I mean, if in 10 years' time it's judged to have the status that it deserves, you know, and I think it takes a long time. Even when this came out, The Central Dry Roses, it was the most recently published book ever.
Well, it'll be very interesting because obviously this is three people discussing a book and none of us have read it. But
it may be very good. I'm not denying this. It's a very good book.
But from my skimming, I mean, he writes in a very distinct way,
Absolutely.
and it's not poetry, but it's not really autobiography either, to be honest, because he talks about himself in the third person. He talks about Morrissey quite a lot, and it's written in a very stylised way.
Yes, it is, and you know, it's his autobiography. We would expect a very strongly authored voice to come through. I think that, you know, if it was just your average bland autobiography, everyone would be shocked.
It's not really an autobiography, though, is it? I mean, because he's giving us glimpses of himself.
But that's
it.
It's his story, and it's the first time that we've really had his story. He's never, you know, whenever he does press interviews, he's always very kind of cagey, and you know, we've been waiting for this for a long time to hear what Morrissey has to say for himself, about himself.
Are you really saying that because he's a songwriter, his prose is unlikely to be any good? Or...
I don't know.
Because you've written a whole article about his lyrics, haven't you? I read it.
I have, yeah.
For a moment, please. I've finished. I've got to the end of the first paragraph.
All right.
The end of the first paragraph, and let me just tell you one thing.
No.
His birth nearly killed his mother because his head was so big.
That would be his chin, presumably. Go on, Tim.
Yeah, what was the question? It was a long time ago now.
Well, it was about, are you saying his lyrics don't, will not turn into prose?
From what I hear, it's a very good book. I've got no complaint with him. I love Morrissey. I'm a huge fan of his. I simply say that you cannot judge what a classic is for a long time. It takes a long time, and for some, he could be very good at writing. I just don't know. I haven't read the book. But it's unheard of, absolutely unheard of for any writer, however good, however esteemed, however great, and these are real writers.
But listen,
let me finish.
Briefly.
However esteemed, ever to get a Penguin classic.
Okay, well, you might get there eventually.
Yeah, but Morrissey is one of the greatest cultural icons this country has ever produced.
You know, Salman Rushdie could bring out a book.
Let me finish now. He's always been a rabble-rouser. He's always been pushing the boundaries of what is acceptable.
This was a great stunt, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I think that it's exactly what we'd expect from Morrissey, and in my opinion, exactly what he deserves.
We must leave it there, and I'm delighted that John finished the first paragraph. Over to him now.
The Director of Public Prosecution says it amounts to the most fundamental shift in attitude to child sex abuse cases for a generation.